the article with Friedman.
Mm-hmm.
And then I believe you went to attentional dyslexia.
Yes, that's right. That's a third problem. We've talked about letter position dyslexia, and then we mentioned letter identification dyslexia, where you don't know that uppercase A and lowercase a is the same. This is a third problem. And this really shows up when you've got to attend to more than one word at once. So an example I often give is because I live in a suburb called Lane Cove, Lanecove. You show those two words to the child, and the child might read them as cane, love. And you see what's happened there. The L and the C have swapped between words. They've still got their same position. So the first position in Lane, first letter in Lane, is moved to the first letter in that's exactly like that. You won't find this dyslexia unless you show children pairs of words like this. So you've got to make up pairs of words where if two letters get swapped, what results is still two words. And if children are doing that, when they're reading single words, they'll be okay. But when they're reading text, if these letters jump from word to word, it's going to be terribly difficult to figure out continuous text. And that's called attentional dyslexia, because you're not correctly identifying using attention that the first word has a L in its first position rather than being in the first position in the second word.
Yeah, well, and I think an important thing that you mentioned was this has nothing to do with a child having any ADHD. And
That's
putting
right.
them on Ritalin is not going to fix this problem. It has to do with their attention to the word and how they process reading, and not whether they have the neurodiversity, ADHD.
Yeah. Well, if you think there are at least 7 different kinds of dyslexia, that is at least 7 different ways in which children can struggle, it doesn't seem very likely that any drug is going to affect all 7 of those. So one of the take-home messages here is the way to try and intervene successfully is, first of all, to understand exactly what is gone wrong in learning to read, which kind of dyslexia it is, and then targeting a treatment at that rather than some broad spectrum thing like giving Ritalin for ADHD.
Definitely. And another thing I wanted to mention is that it can happen vertically, so on the same line if they're reading text, but also horizontally. So if there's a word above it and a word below it, it could affect it. And that's why one of the suggestions for a student with this would be having a little window box for the student to go along when they're reading, and just have it so they're focusing on that one word, not getting distracted by what's around it. And I guess one thing to consider that I don't want to go into a lot of detail in this conversation is that when we're reading, our eyes don't just go from left to right for English, right? It's not like we're bringing our finger across the page. It's different shifts of focus, and we don't see all the letters in a word, especially a longer word, at one time. Yes,
well, it's certainly true that there's a span of attention, which means you can see clearly maybe 7 or 8 letters at one time. And so if it's a longer word than that, then you'll have to look at the word twice, look at the start of the word and then look at the end of the word. And if you can't do that, you're still going left to right, but you're looking at one part of the word and then another part of the word. Another thing that happens is when you're reading, if you're looking at a certain word, focusing on it, if the word isn't very long, then you've got enough of an attention span to pay some attention to the next word. And so you're not just taking information from the word you're directly attending to, you're getting some information from the next word, if your attention is broad enough. And that's something you need to learn, because that means when you go to the next word, you already know something about it. And that's why people get so fluent at reading. And then when you're really fluent, there are a lot of words in text that you can skip. And so you don't go from this word to the very next word. If you already know that the next word is really short, like it's probably of or the or and,
Mhm.
then you don't really need that to understand the text. So you could skip over to the next word that's really conveying a lot of meaning. So that's a way in which you go from being a beginning reader to a skilled reader. You start to take information from the next word, and then you learn sometimes to skip the next word. So you can read word 1 and then you skip to word 4, because words 2 and 3 are really short and they're probably not very important.